When people ask me about what I do, I always tell them I have the best job. I'm the curator of the museum's main exhibition. That's 3,600 square feet, 3 floors of artifacts, film, photographs, and text. And I get to curate special exhibitions. And you're saying, okay, what does a curator do? What is a curator? Well, the word, as you might guess, is Latin. It goes back to ancient Rome. Curators then, of course, had a very different role. They were guardians or caretakers of individuals. And the term changed and evolved over the course of time. In the Middle Ages, for instance, as the power of religion took on greater importance, the curators took care of people's souls. But then in the course of the modern era, beginning probably in the 18th, 19th century, curators came to be associated with museums and collections. And the notion was that they were guardians or caretakers over collections of objects, or of history, or of science, or whatever field it may be. And so essentially what I do in my job is essentially take care of the permanent exhibition, which means that I'm responsible for writing any text that goes in there, adding in new artifacts, and those have to be done, selecting and rotating in new artifacts, and that has to be done continually, especially in an exhibition that has thousands of objects on display. It has to be done sometimes, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. So that becomes a challenge. And the same thing with writing text. When you add something, you have to write that text. And also when it comes down to, for instance, creating an exhibition, curating a special exhibition, which I've had the thrill and enjoyment to do, it's an extremely creative process. You might start with an idea. So it might be a word. And then you build up something around that. Because with exhibitions, and I'm curator of exhibitions as opposed to collections, that I have to tell a story through artifacts, through film, through documents, through words. And of course that could be an immense challenge. Because you have to find those things. You have to come up with a kind of unique way of telling that story. Because in all of our exhibitions, like in books that historians write in the academic world, you want to say something new. You want to make a contribution to that particular field. So we do a lot of our own research, original research, which allows us to go into various archives and museums, including in our own vast collection. And you go through there and you work with these original pieces and you try to illustrate that story. We try to say something new. And it's a remarkable experience. And it's also something that, when you think about audiences, museums are reaching a very different audience in many respects than the academic world. Often I think about it, when I was teaching or in my previous life, that you reach a much smaller number of people. That you tend to specialize in a particular area. But in the case of museums, often you're talking right for the general audience, the general public. So you have to write in a particular way, you have to explain very difficult and complex phenomena to that audience. But it also has a great impact. And I think about, in the case of some of the papers that I used to get when I was teaching, and you get small numbers of people, you write something, maybe 100 people read it, a few hundred people, maybe you got a few thousand people read it in your particular field. But for instance, in our museum, we get almost 2 million visitors a year. So there's a sense of what you're doing is important in doing this public history. And of course, when you're with an institution like mine that has an extremely important mission, then it's all the more rewarding. But also, at the museum, one of the great benefits that we have a number of years. We have, I think, over 51 million pages of documents from archives from around the world that we can use in our research. We've got also 100 million pages of digitized documents that came from the International Trace Research. We're expecting another 100 million. So the museum is a rich repository of research materials. When I think about the institution, this is the #1 research institution in the country, maybe in the world, for doing work, research, scholarship on the Holocaust. So for us, working in exhibitions or working in other parts, this is an extremely wonderful environment. We also have original objects. We have more than a million pages of original objects. We have a large film and video archive. We have an we have a Department of Oral History, and we now have access to a lot of the interviews that were done by the Shoah Foundation. So we have a rich repository of materials there. I also wanted to say that the museum benefits from the fact that we have so many historians. It's not just in exhibitions. There are a number of, most of the curators in exhibitions tend to be historians. It's a museum of history. And the notion is that historians that have knowledge of that history are the best people to curate this and tell this for the general public. But we have historians, PhD historians in our education division. We have also a research division, a scholarly division. The Center for Advanced Holocaust Studies, one of my colleagues from that division is here with us today. And that's a remarkable part of the museum, in that they have not only scholars that produce materials, scholarly publications, as academic publications is there, but they also bring in scholars, respected scholars, as well as young scholars who just got the PhD or are working on it. Right? So it brings in a lot of people, and it leads to fruitful discussion that the entire museum benefits from. You're bringing in scholars that maybe are bringing something new to the table in that research. And it's stimulating, and I think it improves the discipline of Holocaust studies, discipline of history. So we've been encouraging that. We've been encouraging them to come and use the collections that we have. Washington itself is a very rich area with the National Archives, the Library of Congress, for research, so there are many scholars that come there quite often. But historians are also in our archives, in our international programs division, which goes out and surveys archives throughout the world to see what things should be microfilmed for the collection. And so historians play an incredibly important role in the museum. And I think in every case, regardless of what division you're in, whether you're in exhibitions, whether you're in education, or whether you're in the Center for Advanced Holocaust Studies, these are extremely rewarding and I think intellectually interesting positions. And so I think that's the important thing to consider if you're looking at a field outside the academic world, is that these jobs doing public history can be extremely stimulating and extremely rewarding in many respects, not only for your own scholarly interest, but it brings you into contact with a variety of diverse people. Now, when I first came to the museum, I spent most of my life, most of my academic career teaching. And I wanted to do that. The museum had just been open, in fact, less than about 6 months when I came to the museum. I came there first as a historian, and the following year applied for a job as curator of the permanent exhibition. But I'll tell you this is the most rewarding job that I've ever had. I think that just in terms of what you do, in terms of telling the history of the Holocaust to the public, and that's not only in Washington, through our website, which gets 36 million hits a year, visits a year, that were reaching audiences throughout the world. Now we're translating that into languages like Chinese, Farsi, Arabic, Spanish, Russian, a number of different languages to reach the audiences that's interested in this particular topic. It's an institution that I think every day when I go in, for me it's an honor, but also it's something extremely important. I work with about 60 or more survivors, Holocaust survivors, currently work volunteer every week, and to be with them and discuss with them, to discuss things with my colleagues is extremely rewarding. So when I think about the museum, I think about it as a tremendous place to work. It's a tremendous asset for scholars that come in there. But it's a great place. If you're a historian, it's a great